red letters, if you have a red letter Bible, all the things that are in red, the words that he actually said, the things that caused him to speak, what he actually said, and the situations behind them. This week we're going to talk about healing and feeding. Healing and feeding. Looking at Matthew 15, 29 through 38, and also Mark chapter 7, 31 through 37. I think.
37?
Huh?
Or 8 verses, chapter 8 verses.
Oh, excuse me. You're right. It's 37 is the end of 7, and then we go over to 8 to verse 9. It's Mark 7 and 31, all the way up to Mark 8 and verse 9. The remainder of 7 from 31 and the first 9 verses of chapter 8. All right. So I think because of some of the additions that we have in Mark, let me see. We'll just read through both of those. We'll read through both. We'll read Matthew 15, 29 through 38, and then we'll just drop down to Mark, turn over to Mark and read Mark 7, 31 through 8, verse 9, nice and loud.
It says, and moving from there, Yeshua came forth to see Galilee, and going up on the mountain, he was sitting there, and large crowds came to him, having with them those who were lame, blind, dumb, crippled, and many others. And they laid down at the feet of Yeshua, and he healed them.
Oh, you don't have
And
to.
he healed them. 15:31. So that the crowd marveled when they saw the dumb speaking, the crippled well, the lame walking, and the blind seeing. And they praised the Elohim of Israel. And Yeshua, having called his top ones near, said, I have compassion on the crowd, because they have now continued with me 3 days, and do not have whatever to eat. And I do not wish to send them away hungry, lest they faint on the way. And his top one said to him, where are we to get enough bread in the desert to satisfy such a crowd? And Yeshua said to them, how many loaves do you have? And they said, 7, and a few little fish. And he commanded the crowd to sit down at the ground. And taking the 7 loaves and the fish, giving thanks, he broke them and gave to his top ones, and the top ones to the crowd. And all ate and were satisfied. And they picked up what was left over the broken pieces, 7 large baskets filled. And those who ate were 4,000 men, besides women and children.
Okay, very good. All right, and Mark chapter. Here, let's read Mark. Let's just read Mark 7, 31 through 37, because that's where the different part is right there.
It says, and again, going out from the borders of Sor and Sidon, he came to the Sea of Galilee through the midst of the borders of Decapolis. And they brought to him one who was deaf and spoke with difficulty, and they begged him to lay his hand upon him. And taking him away from the crowd, he put his fingers in his ears, and having split, he touched his tongue. And looking up to the heaven, he sighed and said to him, Ephphatha, that is, be open. And immediately his ears were opened, and the binding of his tongue was loosened, and he was speaking plainly. And he ordered them that they should say it to no one. But the more he ordered them, the more they published it. And they were immeasurably astonished, saying, he has done all well. He makes even the deaf to hear and the dumb to speak.
Okay, very good. So let us first of all, think about the fact that last week, when we looked at Yeshua, where he was going, it says here in verse 31, he's going out from where he was before, from Tsur and Sidon, which were these Gentile places where the Gentile people were, and he runs into this Syro-Phoenician, this Canaanite, as it says someplace, woman who was begging him to heal her daughter, begging. And we remember that he goes through all that he goes through, and as it relates to healing the lady, and we see where he is here, where people are just coming in, he's just freely giving, right? And so when we think about, it's interesting when you think about the various ways that we see Yeshua interacting with these different peoples, right? The Gentile woman, he really makes her kind of work, I should say, for what was given, right? He wanted to prove that she was sincere in her asking, and he wasn't just trying to freely give away, it seemed, the blessings. But these people, these masses of people that are coming to him, he's just healing and giving away. He does extra special healings. Did he spit on his finger and put that in his? It looks like he put spit in the guy's mouth, it seems. Is that what it said? Am I not reading that correctly? Did he spit on his finger and touch the guy's tongue? Is that what he did?
It says in the KJV, his ears, and he spit and touched his tongue. He said from the multitude and put his fingers into his ear, and he spit and touched his tongue.
It's just very intimate, is the point. It's very intimate. I don't know what that says. I don't know what it says. I don't know if he put saliva in it. It's very intimate, is the point. It's very intimate. His healing was very intimate with these people. But again, thinking about the where he just came from, the girl, she had a demon. The girl had a demon on her. And just to think about, when you think about these multitudes of people, I wonder what the percentage is when looking at these multitudes that are coming of people who are just only coming to Messiah just for something. They just want something. I mean, most of them I would think it's a legitimate want, if they're blind or crippled or what have you. But I'm just thinking about the percentage when you have these multitudes. How many of those people, if we just think about from receiving their blessing, how many of those people continue on with the master, I wonder. And these ones here, of course, are, he's back. He's off the Sea of Galilee, so he's back where his people are. Right? And again, Yeshua is he's not interviewing the people as they come. Right? He sat there, and people came, and he just healed them. Right? This is what he's doing for these people every day. Right? And so again, it causes us to think about what we see Yeshua hinting towards, and also what we mentioned this last week, what Paul talks about the idea of to the Yahudim first, right? And so there is a intentional purpose behind the way that Yeshua is dealing, and we see that he's over here and he's healing these lame people, and he's causing lame people to walk and blind people to see, and dumb or people who don't speak people to actually speak. It says maimed. It says maimed in Mark, I believe. And in some of the other translations, they say that maimed in other translation reads leprous, right? So they're actually talking about those that have leprosy and more, which would just be various diseases that they are acquiring and looking for healing in those situations. And so we see that Yeshua was out here literally doing these amazing things, healing everybody of everything, but understanding that the things that he's doing is actually the fulfillment of prophecy, which Yeshua brings up when he very first comes on the scene. And so when Yeshua first emerges, when he first publicly goes and does anything, he refers back to Isaiah chapter 61. Go over to Isaiah chapter 61 and just verse 1.
Isaiah chapter 61.
And verse 1.
It says, the Spirit of the Master Yahweh is upon me, because Yahweh has anointed me to bring good news to the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim release to the captives, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound. Okay, very good. So Yeshua, when we see Yeshua in these places, we'll say the places where his people are, the places where he sends his disciples to, and the places that he frequents, he has a particular mission. Right? It might seem like he may deviate from these things at times when we see how he interacts with the Gentiles, but there is no deviation. He has a purpose. There is a plan. And the purpose is to, first of all, as it says over here in Isaiah, to bring the gospel, the good news, to the meek. And so when you think about this idea of this good news, this gospel, this thing that is being proclaimed by Messiah, again, it's good news for various reasons. For one, when you think about just these people here who have all of these things going on, these ailments, these diseases, these sicknesses, these issues, Yeshua comes and he's able to alleviate all of these things, obviously, right? But I think the greater aspect and the part that connects back to this idea of him wanting to deal with the lost sheep of the house of Israel first, this good news is the fact that the Most High has separated himself from his people and is going to provide a way to be reconnected back to his people, and he's the reason. Yeshua is. Which this is good news,
right? They have the temple, they have priests, but the temple is not like how it was before when they had the actual presence of the Most High there. What they have going on is a shell of what once was. And so it's good news to know that there is a way that has been created by the Almighty for there to be a reconnection between the Most High and His people. And He's the reason, right? So He stands up in the place where He first presents Himself publicly, and He brings up this verse where the Most High has anointed me, He says, to bring the gospel. He is the gospel to the meek. Let's look at some of these words here, because again, when we think about all of these things that He's doing, I'm saying that these are manifested through when He does most of the things that He does in His ministry, healing and feeding, right? Look at this word there in Isaiah 61, verse 1, meek. That word there, meek. Pull that up there for us. Meek. Anav, right? Depressed. Figuratively, in mind, gentle. Circumstances, needy, humble, lowly, meek. Look at the word study of that there. Anav. An adjective meaning poor, oppressed, afflicted, humbled. It's used of persons who put themselves after others in importance. Persons who are not proud, haughty, supercilious. That's a good word there, supercilious. Self-assertive, low in rank or position. And so it has to do with a particular frame of mind, a particular way of being humble. Yeshua is there for these humble people who life has actually humbled a lot of these people and put them in a particular situation, and Yeshua, being this one who's being spoken of, the one that is anointed, bringing this good news, He's bringing this good news to these types of peoples. But let's keep on looking over here. Oh, you know what? Let's look at Psalms 76. Psalm 76 and verse 9. Psalms 76 and verse 9. What's that say?
It says, when Elohim arises to right ruling, to save all the meek of the earth, Selah.
Hold on one second. Let me pull this up. I want to look at this. (76 and 9). Okay, very good. He arises to judgment or right ruling to do something, to save all the meek of the earth, all the anav of the earth, all of the poor, the oppressed, right? The needy, the meek, the poor, the lowly, the humble of the earth. These are the things that the Master Yeshua is manifesting as He's going through at this point here, his town, his home base, by the Sea of Galilee, in Galilee proper, right, where His people. Okay, so he's literally doing this, right? He's giving this good news to the meek, a specific meek, his people. Also, Isaiah 61 and verse 1, also, the other thing that he's doing, he's binding up the brokenhearted. And when you just look at that, I think it can be kind of hard to think about, because if somebody's brokenhearted, it seems like they need to be loosed from something, not bound up. Right? If you're brokenhearted, you know, you're down, you're out, you know, you don't. It seems like you're already bound up. He said he was sent to bind up the brokenhearted. So let's look at both of those things there, because when we understand it from a different kind of a situation, it helps us to understand better what it is that the Master Yeshua is doing. Because he's doing it over in Matthew with these people and these situations over here, with their sicknesses and their lamenesses and blindnesses and all of these things, right? And so that word for bind up is what there. Click on that there. Chabash, which is to wrap firmly, especially a turban, like somebody puts a turban on it, wrap it up tight, to compress, right?
Yeah.
To bind, to gird up, to govern. You also see healer there, right? To wrap up. You think about the idea, somebody gets all banged up, and you know they get wrapped up with, you know, I was wrapping Moshe up with some sutures. Actually, it was just Band-Aids, but but there's an idea of binding as it relates to healing, right? And so it says he's binding up, he's chabashing the brokenhearted. What's that word there? Brokenhearted. Shabar, to burst. The English translation is giving you broken-hearted, but if your heart is broken, that thing done bursted. It's busted open. It's broken into pieces. It needs to be put back together. It's been crushed and destroyed, quenched, and to tear. Right? And so now, when we think about this now, from understanding what these words are actually meaning, those that have been burst and broken, they're being bound. They're the one who has been anointed to come, who is Messiah, has come to pull their broken pieces and put them back together again. And that's what he's doing over there with the people who are just coming. He goes and he sits on his stage, which is a mountain. By the way, he sits on the mountain, and people come to him, and he heals them. Right? They come broken and bursted, and he binds them up together again. Which is also, this is good news. Right? The people are finding out that they're able to be broken and bursted, and there's a place that they're able to go and be put back together again. All right, keep on going. Let's go over to Isaiah 61, verse 1, because he's not only bringing gospel to the meek, he's not only binding up the brokenhearted, by way of healing blind people and healing dumb and deaf people, right? He's doing all of those things through these various aspects, but it also says to proclaim release to the captives. Now this is, easy if you're held captive, for someone to say, you're free. He's proclaiming release to the captives. It's the real emancipation proclamation. Those that are captive, he said, no, you're not captive, you're free. It says over in some translations say liberty.
Yeah.
Liberty, right? That word is deror. To move rapidly. Freedom, hence spontaneity of outflow. Spontaneity of outflow. There's constriction, and there's what's Hosea's word that he congestion. I don't think that's the word. I can't think of it. But there's things that are stopped up, congested, and then deror comes, liberty, which causes there to be spontaneity of outflow. Where there's blockage, and then this deror comes, and it makes it be so clear. And it causes there to be rapid movement to those that are captive, that are shabah, that are captive, that have been taken away into captivity. And we talked a little bit about the fact that Israel as a people taken into captivity. It's interesting that the idea of the antithesis, the thing that he's doing for those in captivity, has to do with spontaneity of outflow and rapid movement. When I think about the idea of things that are freeing, I think of being constricted and bound up and closed up. But this word captive is about transport into captivity. But when you think about what happened when the people was transported into captivity, they was changed into something else.
You mean when they got transported into Egypt?
Captivity. Egypt, wherever the captivity is. The people are changed from what they was into something else, which that part is the constricting part. That's the stopping up part. When the people are made into slaves, they're separated from the Most High and not able to do the things that the Most High likes. So while they're in captivity, they're not able to flow freely. Right? They're not able to have, they're not free, right? They're not able to move rapidly. And so what Yeshua comes to do as this one who was anointed to do it, he comes and brings liberty and freedom to them.
I was thinking about, I heard that my uncle had a blockage in his throat. And
Cholesterol. That's the word.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
cholesterol, yeah. Well, it's the same concept, you know?
Yeah.
You can't get anything past, one way or another, you can't get anything past.
Yeah.
You know, you can't swallow, you can't get air down there, you can't
Yeah.
get food down there, nothing.
Yeah.
You gotta remove that blockage so that it can be free, the stuff can freely flow.
Yeah. And when you're dealing with these people, Israel removed, taking out of the way and put in these other places, all of these things and traditions and things that these other peoples are putting on the Most High's people, cause there to be a blockage in the connection between the Most High and his people. And there needed to be liberty. In this case, and now in the case of the people that Yeshua is dealing with, these people's situations were causing them to not be able to, like, imagine, like, I can't personally imagine being in a situation where, like, everything, like, is just bad for me. Which, like, if I wasn't able to see, or if I was blind, crippled, or if I could imagine feeling like I'm just not, I could imagine feeling like this dejected person, where the Most High wasn't there for me. I could imagine feeling that way. I can understand somebody who would feel that way, which probably the majority of these people did. And then here comes Yeshua, who's able to, whether these people were that way by work, by birth, or throughout their life just became that way, they're able to see the light, and they're able to have hope. Yeshua is, in fact, the epitome of hope. And they're able to see that. They're able to see the Most High erase all of these things that was against them instantly. Most of the time, just by a word. Just be healed. Just by a word. Just by a debar going forth. Right? And causing their stopped up, blocked up, bound up, captive life to be free flowing. And so one more thing back in Isaiah before we go back, because the last part there in that verse there is that he opens the prisons to the bound. He opens the prisons to the bound. So that there word is a compound word, pekach koach. Pekach koach. Open the prison. Opening of a dungeon, that is a jail delivery. The opening, the literal opening of a prison.
That reminds me of in Haiti, they released all the
Haiti.
prisoners.
Yes, there was definitely some pekach koach going on over there, right? And so the thing that's being done, right? The opening of the prison to the bound. That word bound, asar, is the yoke or a hitch. Analogy to fasten in any sense, join, battle, hold, prison, put in bounds. And so all of the things, you have all of these things, this idea of being brokenhearted, being captive, being bound, all of these things that are against the people of the Most High, all of these things are being reversed by the one who has been anointed, who the Spirit of the Master Yahweh is upon, and who comes to do all of these things. Now, if we go back to Matthew, understanding that Yeshua is that one, where he's going forth, and people that were dumb and crippled and lame and blind were now seeing. And then we see that in verse 31, Matthew 15 and 31, all of these things happened, and it said they praised Elohim, they praised the Elohim of Israel as a result. And so, again, when you think about, we don't know what these people's situations was, whether they were devout or whether they, had fallen off or what have you. When they was able to come to Yeshua and receive the things that he was for them freely giving, as a result, they was able to give the Most High his proper due, and they praised Elohim as a result. So I want to look at John really fast. John 10, read John 10 and 25 and see what that says.
10 and 25 says, Yeshua answered them, I have told you, and you do not believe. The works that I do in my Father's name, they bear witness concerning me.
Okay, so this is a general thing that Yeshua speaks. We see that the Pharisee Nicodemus was able to understand this idea, and many other people, including these people over here. There's a connection between the things that Yeshua was doing and the fact that it was coming from the Most High. The thing that Yeshua did bear witness of the Father to the people. And so there was a connection. Nobody should have been able to do these things that he was doing lest he came from the Father. And so there's this obvious connection when he's out doing these things, that he's doing these wonders, these miracles that are being performed. This is coming from the Most High, and when people were able to look at these things, they're able to look towards the Father. And so, potentially, again, when you think about thinking back to Isaiah and the thing that Yeshua comes to do, when you think about the idea of being held captive, being taken away to these other foreign places and being attached to all of these foreign deities, all of these strange ideas and things coming into the minds of the people. When Yeshua comes on the scene, he's able to pull people away from these false things that can't do anything. These false things that can't do anything toward the true and living Elohim, who is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who is in fact able to do something, right? A lot. Things that no one is able to do. No one healed lepers. People wasn't going around making blind people see and people who couldn't walk. That's why it was so hard when we look in these verses, especially over in Mark, where he's telling the people that he just healed, don't tell anyone, and they're out telling people. I mean, I think about the people who couldn't say anything. And then all of us, just by the simple fact of them saying anything, they're telling, right? Because they couldn't talk before. And now all of a sudden they can talk. And Yeshua saying, be quiet. Yeshua heals the person who's not able to talk, and then he say, don't talk. Of course he's going to talk, right? Of course he's going to talk. Of course he's going to praise the Most High who gave him this gift of, this healing gift of speaking again, right? Which, is kind of a lesson for us. How many times has the Most High done something for you and you didn't say anything to anyone about it? I don't know if that's
Probably
it.
most of the time because he
I don't
does
know.
so many things for us
I
every
don't know.
day.
I'm just saying. I don't know if that's a thing that you do, but I think that it's clear that is definitely not a thing that you should do,
Testify.
right? You absolutely. I mean, he's telling these people not to do something. They're being disobedient to the thing that Yeshua said. But I don't know how you don't give praises to the Most High for the things that He has done. I mean, at the end of the day, the Most High has a timeline for Yeshua as He walks the earth. And we've seen it said Yeshua doesn't even know what the time was, what the total timeline was in terms of Him returning. Maybe he had an idea what part of the timeline was in terms of Him dying. But we know for a matter of fact He didn't have, from a physical standpoint, when He physically walked the earth, He didn't know what the total timeline was. And so I'm saying that when he's saying these things to these people and telling the people, be quiet about it, keep it on the low, I don't know what that is necessarily. I don't know what that is, because how are they able to be quiet when the Most High has done such a wonderful thing for them? Is that another? I'm just thinking about this right now. Is that a part of Yeshua's humanity when he's trying to quiet these people, because he don't want the word to get around too fast before he's able to do all the things that he's supposed to be doing. Meanwhile, the Most High is in control of everything. Is never going to get outside of His will. Anyway, I wonder if that, I don't know, I'm just thinking about this right now. I wonder, is that part of His humanity in trying to quiet the healed people?
I mean, at this point, it's just totally out there. Like, he's just going around, it seems like one thing after another, after another, after another. It's just, and then food-wise, people need to eat, and he's just making more food. It just seems like it's just, at this point, the floodgate has been opened as far as all these people are sick. They didn't have sanitation back then. Like, they was, what I mean? Like, there was so much going on at that time as far as, like, health needs and all that. And it's just, like, healing all these people. And when I was looking at it, I went back to the Luke verse where he said that Isaiah 61 scripture, he says to those people, because that's in Nazareth, and of course nobody in Nazareth believes in him at all. And he says that they're going to say, physician, heal yourself. And meanwhile, they can't get any healings there in his own place. But outside of his own place, he's able, all he's doing is healing people, feeding people, and blessing people. But those people, they're so bound up in their own self, they can't receive anything.
Yeah, and it's part of what He's doing. It's so interesting that when you think about the thing that stopped the people in His hometown from doing the things that He came there to do is the thing that He came to free them from in the first place. And so it's just like they're not allowing for the Master to bless them. Like they've blocked their own blessing when He's standing right there. But it's interesting when you think about Yeshua and when we look at all that He has come to do, the majority of what he did when he walked the earth was heal and feed. Whether we're talking about physical food or spiritual food. Whether we're talking about physical healing or spiritual healing. In most cases, it's probably all four of those things happen. And so when you look at these verses over here, it's interesting, again, when we think about, as he goes through and we see here, again, comparatively speaking, between the two accounts, Matthew and Mark, I like to go over to Mark. Let's go over to Mark chapter 7 and 31 before we talk about the food thing. Mark 37, actually 34. Mark 7 and 34. Read Mark 7 and 34.
And looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, Ephphatha, that is, be open.
Yes. And so that word there is, if you click on that word there, it's a word from, it's not Greek. It's an Aramaic. The Aramaic there is patach.
We just talked about
Patach.
Takoa.
Right? Well, this is patach. That was pakach.
Oh, that was Paka. Okay.
It's close, right? But the idea here is to be open. But I guess it has the same idea, right?
Yeah, to open up.
Because when you think about before, when the issue that happens when we have a separation from the Most High, our ability to move freely, to flow, is stopped. Right, that's what causes you to die, right? When your heart stops pumping the fluids through your body, right? Things got to be open in order for you to be alive, for you to remain living. And so he says over here in verse 34 to the person, he sighed. He looked up to heaven. He sighed. That's interesting. That's interesting that he says that. Because I guess he allowed for himself to be open. He allowed for breath to be released from himself. He sighed, it says, and said to him, be open. And so he's literally manifesting the very thing that he came to do at every moment. And he's showing his disciples these things. He sends them out to do those same things that that he does. And he later will call for all those that come to believe in him to do that same thing as well. And so it's interesting when we look over here at least this first part here, in terms of, you think of it as just another instance of Yeshua out healing people, but I think that it's important for us to understand that he's completing the only task that he came to actually do, which was to cause his people to be open again. Right? If you're blind, your eyes need to be open. Right? If you're dumb, your mouth need to be open. Right? If you're deaf, your ears need to be open. If there's something wrong with you, something needs to be opened. You know, the ancient people, they thought, I don't know about ancient, but like the old time people, like in the early American history, they thought if you was sick, they just needed to just let some blood out of you. Bloodletting.
That's what they said killed George Washington.
What?
Bloodletting killed.
Oh.
Because I guess he had pneumonia or something, and they just kept on releasing all his blood out. And then, so
I
they
mean,
said
but they
he probably would have recovered if they didn't keep on taking all his blood
I
out.
think they was on to something though, right? Sometimes you just need to be made to be open. Like Yeshua says over here. So we see again this idea of healing, right? Healing. And then also feeding. That's the second part over here. We look at Mark chapter 8, and also the second part of Matthew chapter 15 when he gets into this feeding. Now, we saw another time when he does almost the exact same thing, but this is a different thing. It's a different situation over here. Or, well, you can't say that it's the same thing because you got the same people telling you about a similar thing in different ways. So Matthew talks about the feeding of, which one is this? This one is the feeding of 4,000.
He already fed 5,000.
You fed 5,000 already, right? And Matthew talks about it, right? And so this is a different time, right? But it's a similar situation. You have all of these people, but this time they had 7 loaves of bread and a few fishes, right? So they had a little more provisions this time than they had the other time. There was a little less people this time than the last time. There was 5,000 people. And then they also have a little less left over this time than the last time. Last time they had 12 baskets left over. And so there's different circumstances, different results. And so this is a whole other time, but it's interesting that the way that it happens is kind of just like the last time it happened. Like we got all these people here, which maybe because let's look at Mark. Let's look at Mark because there's some interesting things that happen here that it don't say, but it maybe could be true. Look over at Mark chapter 8. Okay, let's just read Mark 8, 1 through 9 real fast.
It says, in those days, the crowd being very great and not having anything to eat, Yeshua called his top ones near and said to them, I have compassion on the crowd, for they have now been with me 3 days and do not have food to eat.
Okay, hold that right there. Was they with him for 3 days not eating? Or they been there 3 days and then now on this third day there wasn't nothing for them to eat on the third day? Or was they there with him 3 days and with no eating? Was they fasting there with Messiah there for 3 days? It said, I have compassion on the crowd, for they have now been with me 3 days and do not have food to eat. They didn't have food the whole 3 days they was there? And then, keep on reading verse 3.
And if I dismiss
It
them
was fasting. It was fasting. 3 days?
Huh?
Were they fasting?
think they was fasting for 3 days. I think they fasted for 3 days with Messiah.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to send them away, I think. I think he didn't want to end the fast without them having anything to eat.
And
That's
if-
what I think. What does it say, verse 3?
And if I dismiss them unfed to their home, they shall faint on the way, for some of them have come from far.
I think that Yeshua sustained these people because, first of all, remember, I don't know if we went through it up to this point, but if you've read about Messiah, you know that there's times where the Pharisees talk to the disciples and be like, how come you guys don't be fasting? And then Yeshua tells about the fact that, why would they fast whenever they got Yeshua here with them? But I think that here, in this particular situation, to me, it seems like anyway, Messiah's with the people, and they're being sustained just by being with Messiah. And when they go away from Messiah, he wants to make sure that they have their physical sustenance as they go. And so he says over here, verse 4.
Verse 4 says, and his top ones answered him, how shall anyone be able to feed these people with bread here in the desert? And he asked them, how many loaves do you have? And they said, 7. And he commanded the crowd to sit down on the ground, and taking the 7 loaves, giving thanks, he broke them and gave them to his top ones to set before them. And they set them before the crowd. And they had a few small fishes, and having blessed, he said to set them also before them. And they ate and were satisfied. And they picked up 7 large baskets of broken pieces. And those eating were about 4,000, and he dismissed them. Okay,
very good. So, when we see over here, when we look at what Yeshua is doing for these people, he's providing the physical food for these people. He's dealing with them. He already dealt with them from a spiritual perspective. He already gave them the things that they needed for their spirit. He brought them spiritual healing. He's pointed them back to the Most High. And now he wants to see them have their physical needs met. And so when we look over here at, again, what it is that we see Yeshua always doing as being ready and willing and able to serve. Whether you're talking about from a spiritual perspective or from a physical perspective. He wasn't sitting there trying to fill these people up spiritually and then let them go and have physical needs.
Right.
He helped them from the spiritual standpoint and said, these people got to eat now. These people need some actual food. I fed them spiritually, but they need some bread to eat and a little bit of fishes to eat too. And so he's willing, he's ready, he's able to serve both physically and spiritually.
Right.
He's 100% dedicated to the kingdom. And so when we look at this, interestingly enough, when we look at these accounts here, it helps us to understand some basic principles that the Most High wants for us to have an understanding of and to keep going. Is that the Master Yeshua, when he walked the earth, he did two things. He healed and he fed. He healed and he fed. He healed people in their spirit and he healed people in their body. He fed people in their spirit and he fed people in their body. And he did both of those things, all four of those things. And that was his whole purpose. And so how are we supposed to think that ain't supposed to be our purpose? To feed people in their spirit and in their body. To feed them in their spirit and in their body. That's the whole thing that we're supposed to be doing right here. The gospel, the good news, frees you. The good news, the gospel, allows you to open up your mouth and eat spiritual food. The gospel allows you to open up your ears and hear spiritual food and see it and taste it and touch it. Our mission in this life, I don't care who you are, you got the same mission Yeshua had. To heal and to feed. This is what we're supposed to be out here doing, healing and feeding. Not just spiritual food, because what if Yeshua just went around and just all he did was just deal with these people spiritually? He refused to only just deal with these people spiritually. He refused to do it. He said, I will not let these people go up out of here and not have what they need physically. They was with me all this time. I'm going to take care of them, some food for them before they leave. He wasn't so spiritually minded that he was no earthly good. He dealt with them from both parts. He healed them and he fed them. And so it would be behooved of each and every one of us to understand that we, no matter who we are, have a particular mission, and that is to preach this gospel and for our lives to be dedicated to this kingdom. First and foremost, each and every one of us, we have different parts to play in the situation, but our number one goal, no matter who you are, got to be about the kingdom. And we need to be figuring out how we're supposed to heal people and how we're supposed to feed people. Not one or the other, but both. Now, it could be different ways that you're going about doing it, but you need to be doing both of those things, not just one. Everybody's not going to do both of those things in the same way, but we got to be about doing both of those things in whatever way you are able to do those things. And I think that's really the main thing that we learn from these verses over here. He's performing these miracles. He's doing these things for these people, but he's making sure that they have both types of things going on in their situation. He's not leaving them without what they physically need. All right. So that being said, does anybody have any thoughts, questions, comments about any of those things? Okay, so that being said, we will be done for now. Y'all willing, we will be back on next Shabbat to continue with our look at not only the words of the Master, but also the Torah portion. But until then, will say Shabbat Shalom.